I sat at the banquet table, watching my daughter-in-law accept her top salesperson award. She raised her champagne glass toward me and smiled. "How does it feel watching us succeed while you do nothing?" The room erupted in laughter. My son looked away. She leaned closer, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Don't be mad, I'm just teasing." I set down my water glass and smiled back. "Teasing is fun. Want to hear mine? I own 75% of this company. And now you're fired." The ballroom went silent. I could hear ice cubes settling in glasses at tables 20 feet away. Amber's smile froze on her face like a mask that had suddenly become too tight. Her eyes darted to my son, Tyler, then back to me. "That's not funny, Christina," she said, her voice losing its sugary tone. "You can't just say things like that." I remained calm, folding my napkin and placing it beside my plate. "I'm not joking, Amber. I've been the silent majority shareholder of Tech Vista Solutions for 12 years. When Tyler founded this company fresh out of business school, he had brilliant ideas but no capital. I had just sold my consulting firm for $8.2 million. I invested $6 million of that into his startup, in exchange for 75% ownership." Tyler's face had gone pale. Around us, the 140 employees and their guests sat frozen, forks halfway to mouths, conversations dead mid-sentence. The awards ceremony had transformed into something else entirely. I remained anonymous, because I wanted Tyler to build his reputation on his own merits, I continued, my voice steady. I didn't want people thinking he succeeded, only because his mother funded everything. I wanted him to be proud of what he built. I pulled my phone from my purse and opened a folder I'd prepared months ago, back when I first started noticing Amber's behavior toward me. I held the screen up, showing the legal documentation, stock certificates, shareholder agreements, all bearing my signature and that of our attorney. Harold, the chief financial officer, sat 3 tables away. His expression told me he'd known all along, had been keeping my secret as I'd asked. I caught his eye and gave a small nod. "Harold, please process Amber's termination effective immediately. Human Resources will handle the paperwork tomorrow morning." Amber's champagne flute slipped from her fingers, shattering against her dessert plate. "You can't do this. Tyler, say something." But Tyler wasn't looking at her. He was staring at me, and the expression on his face wasn't gratitude or understanding. It was rage. He stood abruptly, his chair scraping backward. "How could you?" His voice shook. "How could you humiliate me like this? In front of everyone I work with, everyone who respects me." I blinked, confusion flooding through me. "Tyler," she insulted me. "She's been cruel for months. I thought you'd understand." "Understand?" Tyler's laugh was bitter. "You just proved what I've always suspected. You've been holding ownership over my head my entire adult life. This company isn't mine. It's never been mine. I'm just the puppet, and you're pulling the strings." "That's not true," I said, my voice softer now, aware that every eye in the ballroom was fixed on us. "I stayed silent to give you freedom." "Freedom?" Tyler shook his head. "You call this freedom? You've been controlling everything while pretending not to. And now you reveal it in the cruelest way possible, just to win an argument with my wife. You know what? I'm done." Amber stood beside him, her shock transforming into something calculating. She placed her hand on Tyler's arm, her touch possessive. "Tyler, honey, we don't need this. We don't need her controlling our lives." "You're right," Tyler's jaw tightened. "If Amber is fired, I resign as CEO, effective immediately, and I'm taking half the management team with me." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I saw department heads exchanging glances, some nodding slowly. "Tyler, please," I said, standing now. "Let's talk about this privately." "No. You made this public. We'll keep it public." He raised his voice, addressing the room. "I've been living under my mother's control for too long. She funded this company, yes. But I built it. I worked 80-hour weeks. I landed the clients. I developed the products. And now she thinks she can use her money to destroy my marriage? I'm not trying to destroy anything," I protested, but my voice sounded weak even to my own ears. "Amber and I are leaving. We're starting our own company, a competitor. And anyone who wants to work for a real leader instead of a silent puppet can come with us." Tyler grabbed Amber's hand. "Let's go." They walked toward the exit. I watched, frozen, as 6 people from the sales department stood and followed them. Then 3 software engineers. Then Patricia from marketing. One by one, key employees filed out of the ballroom, some looking apologetic, others defiant. The room that had been filled with celebration 15 minutes ago now buzzed with uncomfortable whispers. I sank back into my chair, my legs suddenly unsteady. I'd thought I was standing up for myself, reclaiming my dignity after months of Amber's passive-aggressive comments and condescending smiles. Instead, I'd just driven away my only son and potentially destroyed the company I'd spent 12 years nurturing from nothing. Harold approached my table, his face grave. "Christina, we should talk. Soon." I nodded, unable to speak. The award Amber had received still sat on the table where she'd abandoned it, the engraved plaque catching the chandelier light. Top Salesperson of the Year. I picked it up, feeling its weight in my hands, and wondered what I'd really won tonight. Nothing. I'd won nothing at all. 3 days crawled by. I stayed home, curtains drawn, unable to face the office or the inquiries from concerned board members. My phone buzzed constantly with calls I didn't answer. The news had spread through the local business community like wildfire. I'd seen the headlines: Tech CEO resigns after family dispute, mother, son power, struggle rocks local company. I tried calling Tyler 17 times. Each call went to voicemail. I sent texts that showed as read but received no replies. The silence from my son hurt worse than any words Amber had ever thrown at me. On the morning of the 4th day, Harold and Diane, the company's legal counsel, appeared at my front door. I let them in, embarrassed by my appearance. I hadn't showered since the dinner, wore the same sweatpants for 3 days straight, and hadn't bothered with my usual morning coffee routine. "Christina, we need to talk," Harold said gently, settling onto my living room sofa. He was a careful man, methodical, which is why I'd trusted him as CFO for 9 years. "And you're not going to like what I have to say." Diane set her briefcase on the coffee table, clicking it open with practiced efficiency. She was in her 50s, sharp as a tack, and I'd relied on her legal expertise since the company's inception. "There are irregularities," Harold began, pulling out a folder thick with printed spreadsheets. "I've been reviewing the sales commission accounts, and something caught my attention about 18 months ago. The numbers didn't quite add up, but they were small discrepancies. I thought maybe it was accounting errors." He spread the papers across my coffee table, pointing to highlighted figures. But after the dinner, after thinking about Amber's role in the company, I dug deeper. "Christina, she's been stealing from us." The words didn't register at first. "What?" "Embezzlement," Diane clarified, her tone clinical. Amber had access to client payment processing as part of her sales role. We found evidence of inflated commission claims. She would report sales that later got canceled or refunded, but she'd already collected her commissions, and the money was never returned. Harold flipped through page after page, each one showing a pattern. A client would sign a contract. Amber would claim her commission, sometimes as much as $30,000 on a single deal. Then, weeks or months later, the client would cancel, citing various reasons. The company would refund the payment, but Amber's commission would remain in her account. "How much?" I asked, my voice hoarse. $375,000, Harold said quietly. "Give or take a few thousand." She's been doing this systematically, carefully spacing out the fraudulent claims so they wouldn't trigger automatic alerts. I stared at the numbers, feeling something cold settle in my stomach. Amber hadn't just been rude to me. She'd been stealing from the company, from Tyler's dream, from the employees whose livelihoods depended on our success. "We need to press charges," Diane said. "This is criminal fraud. I can file with the district attorney's office today." I reached for my phone. "I need to call Tyler. He has to know he's married to a thief." The phone rang 4 times before Tyler answered. His voice was cold. "What do you want?" "Tyler, please listen. I know you're angry, but there's something you need to know about Amber. Harold found evidence that she's been embezzling from the company. $375,000 over 18 months. Silence. Then, "You're unbelievable." "Tyler, I have the documentation right here. Bank records, commission reports, everything. Of course you do, Tyler said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. You had 3 days to fabricate whatever evidence you needed to destroy her. I should have known you wouldn't let this go. I'm not fabricating anything. Harold discovered this independently. We have proof. You mean the CFO who's been loyal to you for 9 years suddenly found convenient evidence against my wife? Right after you publicly humiliated us? Mom, I'm not stupid. Tyler, please. No, you've gone too far. Amber told me you'd do something like this, try to turn me against her. I didn't want to believe my own mother could be so vindictive, but here we are. The line went dead. I sat there, phone in hand, feeling my world tilting further off its axis. Harold and Diane exchanged worried glances. He doesn't believe me, I whispered. He will when he sees the evidence in court, Diane said firmly. But things got worse before we could take any legal action. The next morning, a courier delivered a thick envelope to my house. Inside was a lawsuit. Amber was suing me personally and TechVista Solutions for wrongful termination, age discrimination, and creating a hostile work environment. Her complaint painted me as a bitter, elderly woman who resented her daughter-in-law's success and used my financial power to ruin her career out of jealousy. The lawsuit alone would have been manageable. What made my blood run cold were the attached exhibits. Bank statements, internal company memos, financial records, all allegedly showing that I, Christina, had been siphoning money from TechVista into personal offshore accounts for the past 5 years. The documents looked official, complete with account numbers, transaction dates, and my forged signature on authorization forms. These are fake, I said, my hands shaking as I flipped through page after page. I never opened offshore accounts. I never authorized these transfers. I know, Diane said grimly, but they're convincing fakes. Professional quality. This wasn't thrown together overnight. Harold rubbed his face. Amber must have been planning this for months, maybe longer. She knew how to access company financial systems, knew what documents would look legitimate. The ramifications hit me like a physical blow. The other shareholders, already contacted, Diane confirmed. Amber's attorney sent copies to all 5 minority shareholders this morning. They're panicking. I've received 8 calls already demanding an emergency board meeting to investigate you. I walked to my window, looking out at the quiet suburban street where I'd lived for 32 years. This house had been my sanctuary, the place I'd raised Tyler, mourned my husband, celebrated, and grieved life's moments. Now it felt like a trap. There's more, Harold said quietly. The story leaked to the press, not just local business reporters. Regional news picked it up. The headline is running on 3 news websites. Tech investor accused of embezzling from own company. Tyler gave an interview this morning. He pulled up a news video on his phone. Tyler sat in a conference room I didn't recognize, looking tired but composed. The reporter asked about the accusations against me. It's heartbreaking, Tyler said, his voice measured. My mother built something incredible when she sold her first business, but I think the power and money changed her. She became someone I don't recognize. The woman who raised me would never steal from the company that bears her investment, but the evidence speaks for itself. I couldn't watch anymore. 3 of our biggest clients called me yesterday, Harold continued. They're concerned about the company's stability. One is threatening to pull their contract, which is worth $2.3 million annually. The walls felt like they were closing in. 4 days ago, I'd been an anonymous investor watching my son's company thrive. Now I was accused of crimes I didn't commit, estranged from my only child, and watching everything crumble. Emergency board meeting is scheduled for next Tuesday, Diane informed me. You'll need to attend and defend yourself. I'm preparing a countersuit against Amber for fraud and defamation, but these things take time. Time, that's what I was running out of. Time to prove my innocence. Time to save my relationship with Tyler. Time to save the company before it collapsed under the weight of scandal and suspicion. The week until the board meeting passed, in a blur of frantic activity. I hired Laura, a forensic accountant with a reputation for uncovering financial fraud. She was expensive, charging $400 per hour, but Diane assured me Laura was the best in the state. Laura worked quickly, examining every transaction in the company's accounts for the past 3 years. She found solid evidence of Amber's embezzlement, tracing the inflated commission claims through multiple bank accounts, but proving my innocence was trickier. The doctored documents are good, Laura admitted during one of our marathon sessions at her office. Whoever created them knew what they were doing, but there are inconsistencies. The offshore account numbers don't match any real banking institutions I can verify. Some of the transaction dates fall on weekends when our banking system was closed for maintenance. Small details, but they add up. Will it be enough? I asked. She hesitated. Given time, yes. I can build an airtight case proving these documents are forgeries, but time is what you don't have. The board meeting is in 3 days, and financial forensics is slow work. Meanwhile, I discovered just how thoroughly Amber had poisoned the well. I learned from Harold that she'd spent months befriending key employees, particularly in the sales department. She'd hosted dinner parties at her and Tyler's home, invited colleagues for weekend barbecues, organized happy hours. She'd positioned herself as young, dynamic, and relatable, while subtly painting me as an out-of-touch, absent owner who didn't understand the modern business. Several employees, when contacted by Harold, admitted they viewed me as Tyler's overbearing mother rather than a legitimate business partner. Amber had crafted a narrative where she was the victim of my jealousy, and many people had bought it completely. The board meeting took place in Tech Vista's main conference room on the 3rd floor. I arrived 15 minutes early, dressed in my best Navy suit, trying to project confidence I didn't feel. The 5 minority shareholders were already seated. Patricia, who owned 7%, Marcus, who owned 6%, Janet, who owned 5%, Gordon, who owned 4%, and Gregory, who owned 3%. Gregory was the one who worried me most. He was a venture capitalist, brought onto the board 4 years ago when we needed his expertise in scaling operations. He was smooth, charismatic, and I'd always felt slightly uneasy around him, though I could never pinpoint why. Harold and Diane sat on my side of the table. Several department heads had been invited to observe, their presence a reminder that this wasn't just about boardroom politics. Real people's jobs hung in the balance. I presented the preliminary evidence of Amber's embezzlement. Laura had prepared charts and graphs showing the pattern of fraudulent commissions. I walked through each example, keeping my voice steady, trying to convey facts rather than emotion. When I finished, Marcus spoke first. "This is concerning, Christina, but it's circumstantial. Commission disputes happen. Clients cancel contracts for legitimate reasons. Without proof that Amber knowingly filed false claims, this could just be aggressive salesmanship. The pattern is too consistent to be coincidental," Harold interjected. In 42 separate instances over 18 months, Amber collected commissions on deals that were later canceled. Our other sales staff average maybe 2 or 3 such incidents per year, and they immediately report them for correction. "That's still not proof of intent," Patricia said. She'd always been friendly with Amber. I should have seen this coming. Then Gregory spoke, and I felt the floor drop out from under me. "I'm deeply troubled by what I'm hearing today," he said, his voice grave and concerned. He looked around the table, making eye contact with each board member. But not about Amber. "I'm troubled by Christina's accusations. This feels like a vendetta." "Gregory," Diane began, but he held up a hand. "Please, let me finish. I've served on this board for 4 years. In that time, I've watched Amber transform our sales department. She's innovative, hardworking, and by every metric, successful. Meanwhile, Christina has been largely absent from day-to-day operations, content to collect dividends, while Tyler and the staff do the actual work." "That's not fair," I said, but my voice sounded weak. "What's not fair," Gregory continued, "is using your majority share position to settle personal grievances. The documents Amber's attorney provided show a troubling pattern of financial impropriety on your part, Christina. Until we can verify your claims and clear you of these accusations, I don't believe you should be making major decisions about personnel or company operations." "You can't be serious," I said, looking at the other board members. "You all know me. I built this company with Tyler." "You funded it," Gregory corrected. "Tyler built it, and I think it's time we acknowledge that distinction. I'm proposing a vote of no confidence. Not to remove your shares, which we legally cannot do, but to temporarily remove you from all operational decision-making authority pending a full investigation into the financial allegations. The room erupted in overlapping conversations. Diane objected strenuously, citing bylaws and procedures. Harold argued about the irregularity of such a vote, but Gregory had clearly prepared for this. He calmly cited precedents from other companies, legal provisions that allowed boards to protect corporate interests when a major shareholder faced credible accusations of wrongdoing. When the room quieted, Gregory called for a vote. My heart pounded as hands were raised. Gregory voted to remove me from operational authority. Patricia raised her hand to join him. Marcus hesitated, then raised his hand. Janet, after a long pause, did the same. 4 out of 5 minority shareholders. Combined with Gregory's expert manipulation of the proceedings, it was enough. Motion carries, Gregory announced. Christina, effective immediately, you're barred from company premises except for scheduled board meetings. All operational decisions will go through an interim management committee. I'll serve as temporary chairman until this matter is resolved. This is absurd, Diane protested. You're making a massive mistake. But it was done. I sat there, numb, as the meeting continued without me. They discussed appointing replacements for the positions Tyler and his departing employees had left vacant. They talked about damage control with clients. They reorganized the management structure. And I realized with horrible clarity that I'd just lost control of my own company. Security escorted me out of the building 20 minutes later. Not roughly, but firmly. Thomas, the head of security who'd worked for us for 6 years, couldn't meet my eyes as he walked me to my car. Outside, a news van was parked across the street. A reporter with a camera operator rushed toward me, shouting questions. Miss Christina, is it true you've been removed from the company? Did you steal money from Tech Vista? What do you say to allegations of fraud? I ducked into my car, hands shaking too badly to get the key in the ignition on the first try. Through the windshield, I saw Tyler standing near the building entrance, talking to Gregory. My son was back at the company. He glanced my way once, his expression unreadable, then turned and walked inside with Gregory. The two of them together, Tyler and the man who'd just orchestrated my removal. I finally got the car started and drove home through tears I couldn't stop. 2 weeks passed in a fog of despair. Diane warned me repeatedly that if we couldn't disprove the forged documents soon, the district attorney might actually file criminal charges against me. The investigation was moving forward, and while Laura was making progress on the forensic accounting, it was slow, painstaking work. I stopped sleeping more than 3 or 4 hours a night. I'd lie awake, replaying every interaction with Amber, trying to figure out when she'd started planning this. Had it been from the beginning, from the day Tyler first brought her home 3 years ago? Or had something triggered it later? I remembered that dinner, the introduction. Amber had been charming, attentive, asking me about my career and my life. She'd seemed genuinely interested in building a relationship. What had I missed? What signs had I been too blind to see? The call from Tyler came on a Thursday afternoon. I'd stopped answering unknown numbers, but his name on my phone screen made me snatch it up immediately. Mom. His voice was carefully neutral. We need to talk. Yes, I said, trying to keep the desperation out of my voice. Please, Tyler, let me explain everything. Amber wants to meet. She wants to resolve this peacefully, as a family. The words sounded rehearsed. I wondered if Amber was sitting right next to him, feeding him lines. She's proposing a private dinner at our house. No lawyers, no Harold, just the 3 of us, talking like adults. Every instinct screamed that this was a trap, but the thought of sitting down with my son, of maybe breaking through to him, was too tempting to resist. Okay, I agreed. When? Tomorrow night. 7 o'clock. Come alone. The drive to Tyler's house the next evening felt surreal. I'd helped him pick out this place 2 years ago, a charming craftsman-style home in a quiet neighborhood with good schools. For the grandchildren, he and Amber would have someday, he'd told me. I'd imagined babysitting in that house, baking cookies with my grandkids in that kitchen. Now I was walking into enemy territory. Amber answered the door wearing a soft pink sweater and jeans, her hair pulled back, makeup minimal. She looked younger than her 29 years, vulnerable even. "Christina, thank you for coming. I know this has been difficult for everyone." Tyler stood in the living room, hands in his pockets, looking uncomfortable. The house smelled like roasted chicken. Amber had set the dining table with good china, cloth napkins, even flowers in a vase. It looked like a scene from a magazine about perfect family dinners. We ate in tense silence for the first few minutes. The food tasted like sawdust in my mouth. Finally, Amber set down her fork and reached across the table to place her hand over Tyler's. "We have some news," she said, her voice soft and trembling slightly. "I'm pregnant." Time seemed to stop. Tyler was watching me carefully, gauging my reaction. I looked at Amber's flat stomach, her hand resting protectively over it. "How far along?" I asked carefully. 10 weeks, Amber said. "We found out 2 weeks before the awards dinner. We were planning to announce it that night, actually, before everything fell apart." I felt tears prickling my eyes despite myself. A grandchild. After years of hoping, of dropping subtle hints that I was ready to be a grandmother. "That's wonderful," I managed. "Congratulations." "Thank you." Amber's eyes were shining. "And that's why I wanted us to meet like this. I don't want this baby to grow up in a family destroyed by lawsuits and bitterness. I don't want our child's first memories to be of grandma and mommy fighting in courtrooms." She paused, seeming to gather courage. "So I want to propose a deal, a way for all of us to move forward." Here it comes, I thought. "If you drop all accusations against me and agree to sell your shares to Tyler for a fair price, I'll drop my lawsuit. We can all start fresh, put this behind us." "What's a fair price?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer wouldn't be fair at all. Tyler spoke for the first time. $2.5 million for your 75% stake." I nearly laughed. The company was currently valued, even after all the turmoil, at approximately $12 million. My shares were worth $9 million. He was offering me less than a third of their value. "That's not a fair price, Tyler. You know it isn't. Given the accusations against you, the scandal, the clients we've lost, it's generous," Tyler said coldly. "The company's value has dropped significantly. If this drags out much longer, it might be worth nothing." Amber leaned forward, her voice pleading. "I know you think I've been cruel to you. Maybe I have. I was jealous, Christina. Jealous of your success, of your history with Tyler, of the bond you share. I felt like I could never measure up to you. So I lashed out, said things I shouldn't have. But I'm willing to apologize and move on if you are." Tears rolled down her cheeks. Tyler squeezed her hands supportively. "The stress of all this, the lawsuits, the fighting, it's not good for the baby. My doctor said my blood pressure is elevated. I'm scared, Christina. Scared that the stress might cause complications." She was good. I had to give her that. The performance was Oscar-worthy. Concerned mother-to-be, remorseful daughter-in-law, just wanting peace for her family. But something felt wrong. A detail nagging at the edge of my consciousness. "Can I see proof of the pregnancy?" I asked quietly. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Amber's tears stopped as if I'd flipped a switch. "Excuse me?" "Medical records. An ultrasound picture. Something confirming you're pregnant." Tyler's face flushed red. "Are you serious right now? You're calling my wife a liar about being pregnant with your grandchild?" "I just want to see confirmation." "This is exactly what I'm talking about," Tyler said, his voice rising. "This is why we can't have you in our lives. You're toxic, Mom. You're incapable of trusting anyone. Incapable of letting me have my own life, without controlling every aspect." He stood abruptly, his chair scraping back. "You know what Dad used to say about you? He said you were brilliant in business but impossible at home. He said you saw every relationship as a transaction, every conversation as a negotiation. I didn't understand what he meant until now. The invocation of my late husband, of things he supposedly said about me, hit like a physical blow. Richard had been dead for 8 years. He couldn't defend himself or me. Tyler was weaponizing my grief. "Your father never said that," I whispered. "He did. Many times. He told me that even though he loved you, living with you was like living in a constant business meeting. And you know what? He was right. You're doing it right now, demanding documentation like this is a board meeting instead of a family dinner. Tyler, I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm trying to protect us both. By accusing my pregnant wife of lying? By trying to destroy her career? By making me choose between you and the woman I love and the mother of my child? He walked to the front door and opened it. I think you should leave. And unless you agree to the deal, don't contact me again. If you continue with these baseless accusations, you'll never meet your grandchild. I'll make sure of that. Amber remained seated at the table, her hand still on her stomach, watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Triumph? Satisfaction? Something darker? You're making me choose, Tyler continued, his voice cracking. My pride or 68 employees' livelihoods. 6 major clients have already left because of this scandal. If it continues, we'll lose more. People will lose their jobs. People with families, mortgages, kids in college. Their suffering will be on your hands, all because you couldn't let go of your pride. I stood on shaking legs. Tyler, please. Let me show you the evidence of the embezzlement. Laura has found concrete proof. 48 hours, Tyler said, ignoring my plea. You have 48 hours to agree to the deal. After that, the offer expires and you get nothing. We'll let the court sort it out, and you'll lose everything. Your money, your reputation, and your family. I walked to the door, pausing beside my son. Up close, I could see the exhaustion in his face, the stress lines that hadn't been there 6 months ago. He looked older, harder. Your father did say something about me once, I told him quietly. He said, never make permanent decisions based on temporary emotions. He said that when we almost gave up on our marriage during a rough patch, he said people we love will hurt us, disappoint us, make us angry, but permanent decisions, made in temporary anger, destroy what matters most. Tyler's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. I drove home through blurred vision, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white. In my driveway, I sat in the dark car for 20 minutes, unable to move. A grandchild. I was going to be a grandmother. Or was I? The pregnancy felt as constructed as everything else. Another weapon in Amber's arsenal. But what if it was real? What if I was sacrificing my chance to know my grandchild because I was too stubborn to surrender? Tyler's ultimatum echoed in my mind. 48 hours. 2 days to decide whether to give up everything I'd worked for or lose my son forever. I didn't sleep at all that night. At 3 a.m, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I'd been lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, running scenarios through my exhausted mind. The message read, "This is Beth from sales. I need to talk to you. It's urgent. Can we meet tomorrow morning?" Beth. I struggled to place the name among the 100+ employees. Then I remembered. Beth, a junior saleswoman, mid-20s, quiet but competent. She'd been at the awards dinner, sitting at one of the back tables. She'd always been kind to me on the rare occasions we'd interacted, asking about my day, bringing me coffee during my office visits. I texted back, "Coffee shop on Maple Street, 8 a.m. I arrived at 7:45, ordered a large black coffee, and sat in the back corner booth. Beth showed up at 8 on the dot, looking nervous. She had dark circles under her eyes and kept glancing at the door as if expecting someone to burst in. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, sliding into the booth across from me. "I wasn't sure if I should do this. I could lose my job." "What's going on, Beth?" She pulled out her phone, scrolling through photos before turning the screen toward me. The image showed Amber and Gregory at what looked like an upscale restaurant. They were sitting close together, Gregory's hand covering Amber's on the table. The photo was slightly blurry, taken from a distance, but the intimacy between them was unmistakable. "I saw them together, about 6 months ago," Beth said quietly. "I was at that restaurant for a friend's birthday dinner. I saw them in a booth in the back, and they were kissing. I didn't think much of it at first. I figured maybe it was innocent. Maybe I'd misunderstood what I saw." She scrolled to another photo. This one showed them leaving the restaurant together, Amber's hand tucked into Gregory's arm. But then at the board meeting when Gregory defended Amber so strongly, it clicked. They're together, having an affair. I stared at the photos, my mind racing. Gregory, The board member who'd led the vote to remove me from operational control. The man who'd orchestrated my exile from my own company. "There's more," Beth said. She pulled a folded paper from her purse. "I overheard Amber on the phone 2 weeks ago. She left this scheduling printout on her desk, and I happened to see it before she came back. It's for a fertility clinic. IVF consultation appointments." The paper showed a schedule of appointments: initial consultation, hormone level testing, ultrasound appointments. All scheduled over the past 6 months. "Tyler and Amber have been trying to get pregnant for over a year," Beth continued. "Everyone in the office knows. Amber talked about it all the time, how frustrating it was, how they were considering IVF. These appointments? They're for consultations. They haven't even started the actual IVF process yet. There's no way she's 10 weeks pregnant. The pregnancy was a lie. I'd suspected it, but having confirmation felt like ice water in my veins and burning rage at the same time. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. Beth met my eyes steadily. "Because I've watched Amber manipulate people for 2 years. She's good at it. She makes everyone feel special, like she really cares about them. But I saw how she treated you at the dinner. It was cruel and unnecessary. And I saw your face when you made your announcement. You looked heartbroken, not vindictive. You were defending yourself, and somehow you ended up being the villain." She leaned forward. "I have a younger sister, 22, just starting her career. If someone treated her the way Amber treats people she considers beneath her, I'd want someone to speak up. So, I'm speaking up. I photographed the scheduling documents and the pictures of Amber and Gregory. Thank you, Beth. You're taking a real risk doing this." "I know, but it's the right thing." She stood to leave, then paused. "One more thing. About a month ago, I was working late, and I saw Amber and Gregory in the office after everyone had left. They were in the server room, downloading files onto external drives. I thought it was weird, but figured maybe it was authorized. Now I don't think it was. After Beth left, I sat in the coffee shop for another hour, thoughts crystallizing into terrible clarity. This wasn't just about humiliation at a dinner or a family dispute. This was a calculated conspiracy. Amber and Gregory were planning something bigger. I called Laura, the forensic accountant. "I need you to look into Gregory's finances, personal and business. Every account, every transaction." "That's going to be expensive and time-consuming," Laura warned. "I don't care. Do it." Then I called Diane. "I need access to company security footage, all of it going back 6 months. "Christina, you're barred from the premises. I can't authorize that without board approval." "Then find another way. We have backup systems, right? Off-site servers?" She hesitated. "Harold might have access through the disaster recovery protocols. He maintains backup access in case of emergencies. But if we use it without authorization, there could be legal consequences." "Do it anyway." For the next 3 days, we worked around the clock. Laura discovered that Gregory had been receiving regular payments to an offshore account, $5,000 a month for the past year. The payments came from a shell company registered in Delaware just 14 months ago. That shell company had been registered by Amber and Tyler. My son was involved. The realization crushed me, but I couldn't stop now. Harold, risking his own position, accessed the security footage. We found what Beth had described. Amber and Gregory in the office late at night, 3 weeks before the awards dinner. They were in the server room, the door propped open. The cameras showed them connecting external drives to the main server, downloading files for over 2 hours. "What were they taking?" I asked. "Client lists, proprietary software code, financial projections, business plans," Harold said grimly. "Everything someone would need to start a competing company. Everything someone would need to destroy us from the inside." The plan became clear. Amber and Tyler would start a competing company. Gregory would help them steal Tech Vista's clients and intellectual property. They'd drive the original company into the ground while building their new venture with stolen assets. And they wanted me to sell my shares cheap so they could take control of what remained. I had evidence now, real evidence. We could go to the police, file charges, stop them. Then my phone rang with devastating news. "Christina, it's Diane. Tyler has filed a restraining order against you. He claims you've been harassing and threatening him and Amber. A judge signed it an hour ago. You're legally prohibited from contacting Tyler or coming within 500 feet of him. That's ridiculous. I haven't threatened anyone. He submitted text messages and emails as evidence. They're taken out of context, but they paint a picture of someone who's unstable and vindictive. I felt the trap closing. With a restraining order in place, I couldn't even talk to my son, couldn't show him the evidence of Amber's betrayal. The next call came from Harold. Gregory has called an emergency board vote. Tomorrow. They're moving to force you to sell your shares at the depressed value, $3 million for your entire stake. The restraining order is being used as evidence that you're unfit to own a majority stake in the company. They're invoking a clause in the corporate bylaws about maintaining company stability. Can they do that? It's legally questionable, but with the restraining order and the pending criminal investigation, they might convince a judge to enforce it. 24 hours. I had 24 hours to stop them before I lost everything. I didn't sleep. Diane, Laura, Harold, and I worked through the night in Diane's office, preparing documentation. We had evidence of embezzlement, fraud, theft of intellectual property, and conspiracy. We had photos of Amber and Gregory's affair. We had proof the pregnancy was a lie. But we needed to present it before the board vote happened. Diane filed an emergency injunction to stop the forced sale and a motion to dissolve the restraining order. We argued that the restraining order had been obtained through false pretenses, that the evidence against me was fabricated, and that a conspiracy existed to steal my company. The judge scheduled an emergency hearing for the following afternoon, just 2 hours before the board vote was set to take place. It would be close, but we had a chance. I went home at 6 in the morning to shower and change into court-appropriate clothing. I was exhausted, running on coffee and adrenaline, but I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. That hope died when I walked into my house. The back door had been forced open. My home office was ransacked. My laptop was gone. The external hard drives where I'd stored backup copies of all our evidence had been taken. Paper files were scattered across the floor, the important ones missing. Even the backup USB drive I'd hidden in a kitchen drawer had been removed. Someone had known exactly what to take. I called the police, filed a report, but the damage was done. My hands shook as I surveyed the destruction. Security cameras showed 2 figures in black clothing and masks, in and out in under 15 minutes. Professional, thorough. We still have the cloud backups, Laura reassured me when I called her. Everything is stored on secure servers. They can't have taken that. The relief was overwhelming. We'd been careful, paranoid even. Every document, every photo, every piece of evidence had been uploaded to multiple secure cloud storage systems. The emergency hearing began at 2 o'clock. The courtroom was small, meant for quick procedural matters rather than full trials. But it felt enormous as I walked to the plaintiff's table with Diane beside me. Amber and Tyler sat on the opposite side with their attorney, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s. Amber wore a tasteful maternity dress despite not being pregnant, her hand resting protectively on her stomach. Tyler looked exhausted, his tie slightly crooked, shadows under his eyes. They were playing their roles perfectly. Young couple under attack from an unstable, wealthy older woman. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Judge Morrison, reviewed the filings quickly. This is about a restraining order and a motion to stop a forced share sale, correct? Yes, Your Honor, Diane began. My client has been the victim of an elaborate fraud and conspiracy. We have substantial evidence that the restraining order was obtained through false statements and that there's an ongoing scheme to steal her company. Those are serious allegations, Judge Morrison said. I assume you have proof? We do, Your Honor. Diane opened her laptop to access the cloud files. Nothing happened. She clicked again. The files weren't loading. Error messages popped up. Access denied. Laura frantically checked her laptop. Same problem. The cloud storage accounts had been locked. The passwords changed. Someone had hacked into our supposedly secure systems and locked us out of our own evidence. My heart sank. Counsel? Judge Morrison prompted. Your Honor, we're experiencing technical difficulties. Our evidence was stored in cloud systems, and we're currently locked out. We need time to regain access. Amber's attorney stood smoothly. Your Honor, This is exactly the kind of delay tactic that has characterized Miss Christina's entire approach to this matter. She makes wild accusations without proof, throws around conspiracy theories, and wastes the court's time. The restraining order was granted because she has been harassing my clients, calling them at all hours, making threats, showing up at their home uninvited. I never threatened anyone, I said, standing up. Diane tried to pull me back down, but I was beyond caring about courtroom protocol. My son is being manipulated. His wife is having an affair with a board member. They're planning to steal my company's intellectual property. Miss Christina, please sit down, Judge Morrison said, her tone warning. They broke into my house last night and stole my physical evidence. Then they hacked our cloud storage to lock us out. Your Honor, I know how this sounds, but I'm telling the truth. Tyler stood as well, his face flushed. She's been saying things like this for weeks, accusing Amber of crimes, making up evidence. My wife is pregnant with my child, and the stress of these constant attacks has her doctor worried about complications. My mother needs help, Your Honor. Professional help. Tyler, please, I said, looking at him. I know you think I'm lying, but I can prove everything. Just give me time to regain access to the files. He looked away, jaw clenched, refusing to meet my eyes. Beth, the junior saleswoman who'd given me the original evidence, sat in the gallery. She'd agreed to testify if needed. Diane called her to the stand. Beth described what she'd seen. Amber and Gregory together, the affair, the suspicious late-night activity in the server room. She spoke clearly and confidently, and I saw doubt flicker across Judge Morrison's face. But Amber's attorney cross-examined ruthlessly. Miss Beth, you work in sales at Tech Vista, correct? And Miss Christina owns 75% of the company? Yes. So she's essentially your boss? In a sense. And if she loses control of the company, your job might be at risk? Beth hesitated. I suppose. So you have a vested interest in supporting Miss Christina's claims regardless of their validity? That's not why I'm testifying. But you admit you have financial motivation to help her? I'm telling the truth about what I saw. What you think you saw. You were at a restaurant, some distance away, briefly glimpsing two colleagues having a meal. You've interpreted that as an affair, based on nothing but speculation, and your desire to help your employer. It went on like that, Beth's testimony being picked apart until it sounded like wishful thinking rather than credible evidence. Harold testified about the financial irregularities he'd found in Amber's commission accounts. But without the detailed documentation we'd prepared, it sounded like routine accounting disagreements rather than proof of embezzlement. Judge Morrison called a recess. We had 20 minutes to regain access to the cloud storage, but Laura was hitting walls everywhere. The accounts had been professionally compromised, passwords changed, security questions altered. It would take days or weeks to fully recover access, not 20 minutes. When court reconvened, Judge Morrison delivered her ruling. I've listened carefully to both sides. Miss Christina has made serious allegations but has failed to provide concrete proof. The testimony I've heard is concerning but not conclusive. However, I'm also troubled by some aspects of the restraining order request. Therefore, I'm dissolving the restraining order, but ordering Miss Christina to cease all contact with the plaintiffs unless it's through legal counsel. I'm denying the injunction to stop the board vote. If Miss Christina believes she's being defrauded, she'll need to pursue that through proper criminal channels with law enforcement. I felt the air leave my lungs. The restraining order was lifted, which was something, but the board vote would proceed. In less than 2 hours, they could force me to sell my shares. Outside the courthouse, Tyler approached me before his attorney could stop him. His face was pale, hands shaking. Did she really lie? He asked quietly. About the baby? I pulled out my phone, showing him the photos Beth had taken of Amber's fertility clinic scheduling documents. She's not pregnant, Tyler. She's been planning IVF treatments, but she hasn't even started the process yet. She lied to manipulate you. Tyler stared at the photos. His lips moved silently, as if he was trying to form words but couldn't. And the affair with Gregory is real, I continued. They've been together for months. They're working together to steal your company, Tyler. Our company. Stop. His voice cracked. Just stop. Amber appeared beside him, her eyes sharp and assessing. She saw the phone in my hand, saw what I was showing Tyler. Her expression flickered for just a moment, mask slipping, and I saw something cold and calculating underneath. "Tyler, honey, we need to go," she said, taking his arm. "Your mother is trying to poison you against me again." "She has papers," Tyler said, his voice hollow. "From a fertility clinic." "Fertility consultation is part of prenatal care," Amber said smoothly. "I was looking into how IVF works because I wanted to understand my pregnancy options better. This is exactly what I've been saying, Tyler." She twists everything to fit her narrative. But Tyler was looking at her now, really looking, maybe for the first time in weeks. I saw doubt blooming in his eyes. "We'll talk about this at home," Amber said firmly, practically dragging him toward their car. Alone. He let her lead him away, but he kept glancing back at me. The board meeting was scheduled for 4 o'clock. I arrived at 3:45, prepared for one last fight. But when I walked into the conference room, I found it nearly empty. Gregory wasn't there. Neither was Amber. Harold hurried over to me. They didn't show up. "Gregory canceled the meeting 30 minutes ago, said there was a family emergency." I tried calling both of them. No answer. Diane arrived moments later, her phone pressed to her ear. She hung up, her face grim. "Gregory and Amber cleared out their bank accounts 3 hours ago. Multiple transfers to offshore accounts. Law enforcement flagged the transactions, but they were too late. The money is gone." I sank into a chair. They ran. "It looks that way. Someone probably tipped them off that we were building a case, that it was only a matter of time before criminal charges were filed. They decided to cut their losses and disappear." "How much did they take?" "From the company accounts, nearly $2 million. Plus the intellectual property they'd already stolen, client lists, proprietary code. They destroyed the master copies on our servers. The IT department is trying to recover from backups, but Gregory had access to those systems. He might have corrupted them deliberately." I thought about Tyler, about the look on his face when I'd shown him proof of Amber's lies. He'd believed me, if only for a moment. But now Amber was gone, and she'd taken my son's dreams with her. Over the next week, the full extent of the damage became clear. 6 major clients had left, representing nearly 30% of the company's annual revenue. The proprietary software code that had taken 3 years to develop was irretrievably corrupted. Several key employees had quit, afraid the company would collapse. Law enforcement issued warrants for Gregory and Amber's arrest, but they'd vanished. Interpol was notified, but tracking people with money and planning was difficult. They could be anywhere. Tyler came to see me one evening, showing up at my door without calling first. He looked like he'd aged 10 years. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair uncombed, his eyes red from crying. "I'm in therapy," he said without preamble. 3 sessions so far, trying to process everything. I invited him in. We sat in my living room, the same room where Harold and Diane had first told me about the embezzlement a month ago. It felt like a lifetime. "I checked," Tyler said quietly. "She wasn't pregnant. I found the fertility clinic documents at the house. You were right about that. I don't know what else you were right about, but you were right about that." "I'm sorry," I said, and I meant it. "My company is falling apart. Employees are leaving. Clients don't trust us. The woman I loved, the woman I thought I'd spend my life with, she stole $2 million and disappeared. And it's all my fault because I didn't believe you." "Tyler." "No, it is. You tried to tell me. Beth tried to tell me. I ignored everyone because I wanted so badly to prove I could make it without you that I let myself be manipulated by someone who was using me the whole time." He broke down then, sobbing in my living room like he hadn't since he was a child. I held my son while he cried, feeling my own tears fall. We'd won the legal battle. The restraining order was gone. The forced sale had been prevented. But the victory felt meaningless as I watched my son's heart break. The company seemed beyond saving. Employees were resigning every day. Our reputation was shattered. The stolen intellectual property meant we couldn't even deliver on existing contracts. Everything we'd built together, gone. I stood in the office late one night 3 days later, surrounded by resignation letters. The stack had grown to 15. Each one represented a life disrupted, a family worried about their future. Good people who'd done nothing wrong, but were paying the price for a conspiracy they'd never seen coming. Tyler was in therapy, as he'd said, barely functioning. His marriage was over, his trust shattered. Mother and son were speaking again, which was something, but our relationship felt fragile, a vase that had been shattered and glued back together. It would never be quite the same. The company I'd invested in 12 years ago, the dream I'd helped fund and watched grow, seemed beyond redemption. Law enforcement was searching for Gregory and Amber, but they were ghosts, disappeared into whatever network of offshore accounts and false identities they'd prepared. I'd considered bankruptcy. Considered just letting it all go. I was 67 years old, tired, and heartbroken. Maybe it was time to admit defeat. Harold found me there at midnight, staring at financial projections that showed no possible path forward. "Go home, Christina," he said gently. "There's nothing more we can do tonight." "I destroyed everything," I said. "If I'd just stayed silent at that dinner, if I'd let Amber's comment go, none of this would have happened." "That's not true, and you know it. Amber and Gregory were planning this long before that dinner. You standing up for yourself just accelerated their timeline." "Maybe. But I lost my son's trust. I lost the company. I lost everything that mattered." Harold sat down beside me. "Laura called me an hour ago. She found something." I barely had the energy to respond. "What?" "Gregory and Amber made a mistake. When they transferred the $2 million, they moved it through 3 different banks before sending it offshore. One of those banks flagged the transaction as suspicious because the amount and pattern matched known money laundering schemes. Federal investigators froze the accounts before the final transfer completed." I looked up. The money? Still frozen. Still accessible. Law enforcement can recover it. For the first time in days, I felt a flicker of hope. How long? Weeks, maybe months. But it will come back. We'll get our money back. That night, I called Beth. Despite everything, despite the risk to her career, she'd stood up for the truth. "You kept documentation of Amber's client interactions, right?" "Yes," Beth confirmed. "Everything. Emails, phone logs, meeting notes. I thought it might be important someday." "Can you help me contact the clients who left? The big ones?" "Of course." Over the next 2 weeks, Beth and I worked together, personally calling every major client who'd abandoned us. I was honest, painfully so. I explained the fraud, the embezzlement, the stolen intellectual property. I admitted the company had been damaged, but not destroyed. I offered better contract terms, guarantees, and my personal commitment to rebuild. "Why should we trust you?" one client asked bluntly. "A technology firm that had been with us for 5 years before leaving." "Because I'm putting everything on the line," I said. "My reputation, my money, my relationship with my son. I'm not running. I'm not hiding behind lawyers or PR firms. I'm telling you the truth and asking for a second chance." Slowly, carefully, clients began returning. Not all of them. Some had moved on, signed contracts elsewhere, but enough. The hemorrhaging stopped. Tyler had discovered something crucial. He'd kept personal backup copies of all the software code. He was paranoid about losing work, he explained, so every Friday night for 3 years, he'd backed everything up to an external drive he kept at home. The intellectual property Gregory had tried to destroy was recoverable. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I asked. "I didn't realize how important it was until I saw the damage assessments. I just backed things up out of habit." He managed a weak smile. "Dad always said paranoia was healthy in business." The IT department began restoring systems. It took 3 weeks of around-the-clock work, but the software was rebuilt, better than before, because Tyler used the opportunity to fix bugs and improve performance. Employee morale improved once the truth came out. The people who'd left were the ones who'd been loyal to Amber's charisma rather than the company itself. The ones who stayed were committed to rebuilding. I restructured the board completely. Patricia, Marcus, and Janet, the board members who'd voted against me under Gregory's influence, resigned. I brought in new people, carefully vetted, with clean backgrounds, and genuine interest in the company's success. Harold was given a substantial bonus and a seat on the board. Beth was promoted to sales director, her integrity recognized and rewarded. 4 weeks after Gregory and Amber fled, they were arrested at an airport in Cancun trying to board a flight to Argentina using poorly forged passports. Mexican authorities, working with Interpol and U.S. federal agents, detained them. They were extradited back to the United States 3 days later. I attended their arraignment, but felt no satisfaction watching them in orange jumpsuits, hands cuffed, facing a judge. Amber looked smaller somehow, her confidence stripped away. Gregory looked defiant, angry. They were charged with wire fraud, embezzlement, theft of intellectual property, conspiracy, and several other federal crimes. The prosecutor laid out their scheme in devastating detail. They'd planned for over a year to steal the company, had even registered their competing business 6 months before the awards dinner. Amber's cruelty to me had been deliberate, designed to provoke a reaction she could use against me. Tyler attended the trial every day. He wanted to see it through, he said. Wanted to understand how he'd been so completely deceived. His therapist said it was part of his healing process. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The evidence was overwhelming. Gregory's offshore accounts, Amber's falsified documents, security footage showing them stealing proprietary files, witness testimony from Beth and Harold and others. The jury deliberated for 6 hours, guilty on all counts. Gregory was sentenced to 7 years in federal prison. Amber received 6 years. They'd served their time in separate facilities, their partnership dissolved by prison walls. Tyler filed for divorce the day after the verdict. The proceedings were swift since Amber's fraud was fully documented. She didn't contest it. What could she say? I sat in the courtroom as the judge finalized the divorce, watching my son officially end the marriage that had nearly destroyed him. He was 33 years old, starting over, trying to figure out who he was without Amber's manipulation. "Want to get coffee?" I asked him afterward. "Yeah," he said. "I'd like that." We sat in a quiet cafe, not saying much at first. Then Tyler spoke, his voice raw with emotion. "I need to apologize. For not believing you. For choosing her over you. For saying those things about Dad." "Tyler." "No, let me finish. Dad never said you were impossible to live with. I made that up because Amber told me to, said it would hurt you enough to make you back down. She wrote a script for me, and I followed it because I wanted so badly to believe I was protecting my family from you instead of the other way around. You were manipulated by someone very skilled at manipulation. That's not an excuse. I'm your son. I should have trusted you." He wiped his eyes. "I'm so sorry, Mom." "I forgive you," I said simply. "And I'm sorry too. For not being more open about my involvement in the company. For letting secrets build walls between us." "Can we start over?" he asked. "Not pretend the past didn't happen, but try to build something better?" "I'd like that very much." Tyler moved back into his childhood home temporarily while he figured out his next steps. We had dinner together every night, sometimes cooking, sometimes ordering takeout. We talked about everything: his therapy sessions, my struggles to rebuild the company, his fears about trusting people again, my loneliness since his father died. We were rebuilding our relationship on honesty instead of secrets. It was harder than the old way, more uncomfortable, but it was real. 6 months after everything imploded, I called a company-wide meeting. Every employee attended, nearly 80 people now that we'd hired to replace those who'd left. They filled the main conference room, standing along the walls when the chairs ran out. I stood at the front, looking at their faces. Some were curious, some worried, some hopeful. "I want to tell you a story," I began. 6 months ago, at an awards dinner, my daughter-in-law called me a nobody. She asked how it felt to watch others succeed while I did nothing. For years, I'd kept silent about my role in this company, thinking I was protecting my son's pride. But that silence created a foundation of secrets that nearly destroyed us. I told them everything. The funding I'd provided 12 years ago. The decision to remain anonymous. The slow realization that Amber was manipulating situations, stealing money, planning a coup. The humiliation of being accused of crimes I didn't commit. The pain of watching my son turn against me. "I learned something through all of this," I continued. "Real love isn't about control or protection. It's about honesty, boundaries, and trusting the people you love to handle the truth. I thought staying invisible would help Tyler build confidence. Instead, it created confusion and resentment. I paused, gathering my thoughts. I also learned that standing up for yourself isn't cruel. It's necessary. Amber called me a nobody, and for a moment, I believed her. But I'm not a nobody. None of us are. We teach people how to treat us. I finally taught the truth. The room was silent. This company nearly died because of secrets and manipulation. We survived because good people like Beth and Harold spoke truth even when it was risky. We survived because clients gave us a second chance. We survived because Tyler and I chose honesty over pride. And we're going to thrive because we've learned from our mistakes. I outlined new policies: financial transparency, regular all-hands meetings, open-door management, whistleblower protections. If any of you ever see something wrong, speak up. Don't wait. Don't assume someone else will handle it. We're building a culture where truth is valued more than comfort. When I finished, the room erupted in applause. Not polite corporate clapping, but genuine, sustained applause. Beth stood first, then Harold, then one by one, everyone rose to their feet. I felt tears streaming down my face and didn't bother wiping them away. That evening, I sat at my desk, looking at a framed photograph I'd brought from home. My late husband Richard, myself and baby Tyler from 35 years ago. Richard's arms were around both of us, his smile bright and proud. I'd been 32 in that photo, just starting my first consulting business, believing I could conquer the world. We did it, I whispered to the photograph. Our boy is going to be okay. The company is going to be okay. And so am I. My phone buzzed with a text from Tyler. Dinner Sunday? I'm cooking, trying that pasta recipe Dad used to make. I smiled, typing back. I'll bring dessert. And maybe Dad's old recipe book. I think there are notes in the margins you've never seen. 3 dots appeared immediately. I'd like that. Love you, Mom. Love you too, I replied. The company did more than survive. By the end of the year, we'd grown our client base by 40%. The software Tyler had rebuilt performed better than the original. Employee satisfaction scores reached all-time highs. We'd become something stronger because we'd been broken and rebuilt with honesty as our foundation. I no longer hid my ownership. I was proud of what I'd built, proud of the risk I'd taken 12 years ago when I'd invested in my son's dream, proud of fighting back when everything tried to destroy me. Tyler and I created a new tradition: Sunday dinners, just the two of us, cooking together in my kitchen. We'd talk about the week, share victories and frustrations, sometimes laugh, sometimes cry. Our relationship would never be exactly what it was before, but it was better. It was real. I reflected on everything one quiet evening as I walked through the office after hours. The lights were dimmed, the computers humming softly. This place represented 12 years of my life. My late husband's legacy through the money we'd built together, my son's talent and vision, and the work of dozens of good people. They say revenge is sweet, but triumph is sweeter. I didn't win by destroying Gregory and Amber. They destroyed themselves through greed and cruelty. I won by refusing to be destroyed. By standing up, speaking truth, and fighting for what mattered. And in the end, I gained something more valuable than any company. I gained myself back. I gained my voice. I gained the knowledge that I was strong enough to face betrayal, public humiliation, and the worst kind of family crisis, and still come out standing. And I gained my son back. Our relationship rebuilt on truth instead of secrets. Have you ever been in a situation where standing up for yourself cost you something precious, at least temporarily? Where doing the right thing felt like the wrong choice because of how others reacted? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Sometimes the hardest part of our journey isn't the challenge itself, but having the courage to face it when everyone tells us to stay quiet. If this story resonated with you, please take a moment to like this video. It helps others find these stories when they need them most. And if you'd like to hear more stories about resilience, family, and finding strength in impossible situations, please subscribe to the channel. Your support makes it possible for these stories to reach people who need to hear them. Consider sharing this with someone who might need a reminder that standing up for yourself, even when it costs you everything, is sometimes the only path to true peace. Sometimes the people who call us nobody are really saying they're threatened by our strength. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here, for witnessing this journey, and for being part of a community that values truth and resilience. May you always have the courage to stand up for yourself, the wisdom to speak truth even when it's hard, and the strength to rebuild when life tries to break you. You're stronger than you know, and you're never truly alone. Take care, and I'll see you in the next story.